7 weeks since Belfast City Council changed its flag policy. Since then, violence has accompanied many of the protests. One of the most shocking aspects of the trouble has been the number of young people involved, some of them very young indeed. How do we get them off the streets? Debbie Watters is Assistant Director of Northern Ireland Alternatives. It's a community-based restorative justice programme. Koulla Yiasouma is from Include Youth. Good evening to you both.
Good evening,
Debbie Watters, what are young people saying to you about why they're rioting?
Well, young people are talking directly to the staff and alternatives, and I think there are two issues here, Seamus. I think there are some young people who really feel strongly and feel disaffected by the whole cultural issues and other issues that are at play in this whole protest issue. And there are other young people, I think, who just enjoy the rioting and get a buzz from the rioting and are there for that reason. And we need to name that as well. So I don't think a simplistic analysis is the way to go with this.
Koulla Yiasouma, do they have any conception of a political cause?
I think that's a challenging one. And if we look at who these young people are, I think as we see them progress through the criminal justice system, if they're arrested, we'll find that they're no different from other young people involved in the criminal justice system, and they are typically characterised as young people for whom school hasn't done very well, who come from a very difficult, troubled family background, who have other disadvantages, and who generally don't see themselves as part of their communities or their society.
Do they care about the risk of getting a criminal record?
I don't think they think that there's any consequences, because generally they don't have the aspirations. What we have to do is make sure that young people have the life opportunities that some other young people do in more affluent areas of our communities, and that's what's been challenging. It's not unusual to see children, young people involved in these sorts of disturbances. You know, we look back through the last 40 years in Northern Ireland and find often that young people are involved. We look anywhere around the world and find young people are involved in these sorts of disturbances.
An awful lot of young people who live in areas that would be regarded as deprived or disadvantaged are not rioting. The majority of them are.
Well, yes, I think that's true, Seamus, but we have young people who are. We have young people who feel disaffected, and we have young people who are enjoying this. And the question is, what do we do about that? I think we need to move on. What do we do about that?
What are their parents doing about it?
And what are their parents doing about it? How I would respond to that is to say, we don't need any more scapegoating. Scapegoating parents and scapegoating young people does not change things. We need to offer solutions, and we need to be able to begin to support parents and work with parents around how they keep their young people off the streets.
Koulla Yiasouma, is it a mistake to think it's down to youngsters who don't achieve in school? A well-known headmaster in East Belfast was saying today he knows some of the young people on the street have qualifications.
I read the article from the well-known headmaster, and he lost me halfway through the argument, and it did cause me to start shrieking at the newspaper as I was reading it, and my colleagues in the office were wondering what was going on. I think, of course there are always exceptions, but when we look at who these young people are, we will find they are generally those who are disaffected, and I know that's a term that not everybody buys into, but young people from the Malone and from Cultura are not involved in these disturbances, so it doesn't work. The argument that they are just doing it for the kicks, which is what was suggested in this morning's newspaper, doesn't work for me. I think there is no doubt that young people are getting a thrill out of involvement in this activity.
So should they be taught a lesson? Should the police and the courts come down hard on them?
This is where, again, I found myself parting company with the Chief Constable this morning as well. He was making very clear statements, and that young people are going to get criminal records, and of course they are. If somebody breaks the law, then the law needs to act. But all the evidence says, all the research says that the best way to stop a young person committing crimes or further crimes is to begin to look at what it is, help them go to school, help their families look after them. This is not easy stuff we're talking about. It's hard for them. The other thing that I found very challenging in all this process is there's a lot of talk about the adults, and police are saying we know adults are encouraging and facilitating young people. What is going on? We are putting our young people in vulnerable positions, and what we're doing is we're arresting the young people. We're not protecting our children.
I think, Seamus, that's the big issue for me in this whole context. Young people will be scapegoated. Young people will have criminal records. But why are the young people there? It's adults, and I'm not saying the protests are wrong, I'm not commenting on that. but it's adults who are creating the conditions that are allowing the young people to come out on the streets.
So you're saying the people who organise protests that get out of control have this to answer for as well?
I think people need to take responsibility for their actions and understand that there are consequences. People have the right to peaceful protest, but if young people are on the streets, who takes responsibility for that? Is it only the responsibility of the parents, or do we as a wider society have responsibility? And that doesn't just include the protest organisers, that includes our politicians.
Are you depressed by what you've seen in recent days, after all that you've tried to do and your colleagues?
Seamus, I was very depressed on Saturday evening, I must admit to that. But I had a meeting today in East Belfast with community workers and the PSNI, and after that I know that there is hope, because the work that some community workers and others are doing on the ground, including the PSNI, I think will lead us to a solution. But in that solution, we need our political representatives, not only at the centre of it, but leading it. And I don't just mean the Protestant politicians. If Sinn Féin, if the SDLP and if the Alliance feel they have a part in this and want to be at the centre of it, then they need to be willing to make necessary changes to their policies and their strategies so that real change can take place.
So, Koulla Yiasouma, society is failing people. How do you get to grips with that?
There's a lot of good work. I mean, let's not forget, this is only 7 weeks. Within a much longer period of time. There's a lot of good work going on around supporting families, sustained work, partnership work that involves all the agencies that Debbie's talking to, including her own organisations like Debbie, who are beginning to get the resource and the recognition they need to do the work. We are in a good place in Northern Ireland. Up until the beginning of December, things were looking really good. Let's hopefully see this as a blip, but let's get back on the road that we were doing around family support and early intervention.
Koulla Yiasouma, Debbie Watters, thank you both very much indeed. Time is 12 minutes.